A conflict at West Mountain Base is imminent. Zhang Yi and two others are heading towards West Mountain Base. Yang Xinxin is also on edge at home, not daring to relax for a moment. She told Zhang Yi, West Mountain Base has just confirmed the missile launch time with River South Domain. It's definitely tonight at midnight, without error. I've already secretly modified the coordinates, so there's no need to worry. Zhang Yi asked her to continue monitoring their every move online, while he himself drove slowly towards the destination. After all, it was a dark and windy night, and Zhang Yi did not dare to drive too fast. Soon, they arrived near the base. Zhang Yi parked the car 3 kilometers away from the base, then took out a box from another space. After opening it, there were 10 syringes inside. He passed 2 each to Chunlei and Uncle Yu. This is a special stimulant that can excite the body and nerves in a short time, significantly enhancing a person's combat ability and reducing the sensation of pain to some extent. After saying this, Zhang Yi injected himself in the arm. Uncle Yu did not hesitate to do the same. Chunlei weakly asked, "This thing won't have any side effects, right?" Zhang Yi rolled his eyes. "Don't worry, even if there are side effects, they won't affect us in the short term. Our primary concern is to save our lives. It's not too late to recuperate after the mission is completed. The surprise for West Mountain Base is coming soon." Then, they waited in the car for the missile to strike. At this time, in West Mountain Base, Liang Yu came to the 4th life pod again. She went to her students' dormitory to remind everyone, "Put on all the clothes you have that can keep out the cold." It was then that the students realized that Teacher Liang was indeed planning to take them out of there. Wu Chenyu signaled everyone to keep quiet. "Teacher Liang would never harm us. We just need to do as she says." Everyone closely followed behind Liang Yu, waiting for an opportunity to escape. At this time, Chen Xinyan was not sleeping early as usual, but was nervously watching his laptop, waiting for the news that Zhang Yi's shelter had been bombed. Chen Xinyan was comforting himself, thinking that although launching the missile cost him a significant favor, the thought of getting rid of Zhang Yi, a major thorn in his side, made it all seem worth it. From a certain perspective, Zhang Yi was considered by Chen Xinyan to be an even bigger threat than other major forces in Heavenly Sea City. After all, Zhang Yi had once caused him a painful defeat. As a high-ranking official of Heavenly Sea City, to be humiliated by such a clown was something Chen Xinyan could never accept. However, at such a crucial moment, he did not plan to enjoy this victory alone. He called over the team leader, Ling Feng, to tell him indirectly that the person he couldn't deal with had been easily handled by him, as a reminder to Ling Feng not to overestimate his abilities, implying that Chen Xinyan could manage without him. Ling Feng was surprised to learn that Chen Xinyan had a way to deal with Zhang Yi. This old guy got to his current position entirely because of his family's power. In terms of combat readiness, Chen Xinyan, you might not even compare to an upper-class soldier. Ling Feng couldn't figure out what method he might have to deal with Zhang Yi. At this moment, Chen Xinyan was full of confidence. "I just want to remind you that mutants are not invincible. Even now, in the post-apocalyptic world, the power of the military is still unquestionable." Ling Feng nodded. "Don't worry, I will definitely follow your arrangement." Chen Xinyan turned the computer screen to show Ling Feng, the top leader of River South Domain, Zhu Zheng, owes me a big favor. So, I contacted him to get a ground-penetrating missile. Hearing this, Ling Feng was overjoyed. "We can finally avenge our brothers. This time, Zhang Yi is surely dead." Chen Xinyan said proudly, "I've always said, don't think just because you've luckily awakened some special abilities that you can be arrogant. You're still too young." He then called Ling Feng to stand behind him. "Ling Feng, come over here. Today, we'll see how this arrogant Zhang Yi is blown to pieces. No matter how sturdy his shelter is, it can't withstand the attack of a ground-penetrating missile." Ling Feng was naturally very excited. "So many of my brothers died at his hands, and now I can finally relieve my hatred. It's just that, to deal with just Zhang Yi, using a high-yield ground-penetrating missile seems a bit wasteful." Chen Xinyan said helplessly, "It's true that a higher rank crushes the lower one. Once upon a time, my rank was almost the same as Zhu Zheng's, but now they control the weapons, and in the end, they've become the overlord of the River South Domain." Ling Feng suddenly had an idea. "If we could get the support of Commander Zhu, wouldn't Heavenly Sea City be ours for the taking?" Chen Xinyan glanced at Ling Feng. "You're being too naive." Chen Xinyan couldn't help thinking, although I have some connections with Zhu Zheng, it's now the apocalypse. If I can't create value for him, he has no reason to help me. Time passed by every second. Yang Xinxin did not take her eyes off the screen for a moment, fearing she would miss any crucial information. It was almost midnight. At this moment, at the command center of River South Domain headquarters, as a middle-aged man in military uniform pressed the launch button, a heavy missile soared from the silo, trailing a tail of fire that caught through the night sky, exceptionally conspicuous in the quiet night. Chen Xinyan's eyes showed excitement, staring intently at the screen. Just then, the information department at West Mountain Base detected an unidentified object speeding towards them. The information department immediately went into a frenzy. "This is a missile coming from the direction of Capital of Splendor. The target seems to be us. Report it quickly." But the missile's speed didn't give them time to react. Zhang Yi, in a snow vehicle, saw a bright light approaching from the horizon, falling to West Mountain Base like a meteor. With a loud boom, Bam! A muffled sound almost shook the area within 10 miles. Even the snow vehicle parked 3 kilometers away was nearly flipped over by the shockwave. Zhang Yi immediately informed Yang Xinxin the missile coordinate modification plan was successful. Inside the safe house, Yang Xinxin was already prepared, and everything proceeded according to plan. She immediately cut off the electricity system of West Mountain Base. At this time, the interior of West Mountain Base was in chaos, as if it had experienced a major earthquake. The sudden shutdown of the electricity system plunged the entire base into darkness. Screams filled the base. Chen Xinyan had no idea what was happening and suddenly slumped to the ground, weak at the knees. What's going on? How could this happen? It was then that the information department called. Bad news, Lord Chen. We've been hit by a missile. Chen Xinyan was puzzled. Who would dare attack us with missiles? Could it be that Zhu Jing has betrayed me? However, Chen Xinyan quickly regained his composure. He knew that the priority was to quickly restore order to the base and ensure his own safety. Thinking this, Chen Xinyan immediately ordered Ling Feng, quickly call the special forces to protect my safety. Also, make sure that those people in the 4th life pod don't cause any trouble. Send troops to guard it strictly. Finally, tell the engineers to hurry up and repair the electricity. Chen Xinyan was aware that West Mountain Base was very robustly built and couldn't be breached by just a few missiles. As long as we stabilize the current situation, the advantage is still ours. The intense shaking caused the soldiers guarding outside the base to panic. They hurriedly tried to use their communication devices to contact the command center, but the underground power supply had been cut off by Yang Xinxin, and everyone was in disarray, unable to contact anyone. Just then, Zhang Yi, driving the snow vehicle, came crashing in at high speed, instantly knocking down 4 people. Before the guards could react, Zhang Yi and his 2 companions, along with their cat, had already stepped out of the vehicle with guns in hand. In just 2 minutes, the guards at the entrance were all taken down. Although the ground guards were the most elite soldiers, they stood no chance against the trio and their mutant cat. Zhang Yi glanced at the southern entrance of the base. He didn't plan to storm in directly. With a serious look, Zhang Yi said, "Next, it's up to Liang Yu." At this moment, in the 4th life pod, the students were also shouting and screaming due to the sudden shaking. Liang Yu then understood. So, this was the reason we were told to wait until midnight? Fortunately, the shelter is exceptionally sturdy. Despite the severe shaking, there are no signs of collapse. Liang Yu signaled the students behind her, "Quickly, follow me." Liang Yu no longer had time to explain to the students. Every second counted now. Once West Mountain Base managed to restore the electricity system in order, they would have no chance to escape. Liang Yu took out her phone for light, and everyone closely followed behind her. The hall of the 3rd life pod was in chaos. The soldiers were also taken aback for a moment. They were holding guns, ordering everyone to quickly return to the 4th life pod. But now, in the pitch dark, they dared not shoot rashly. Most importantly, they had not yet received orders from above to fire. Seeing the chaotic scene outside, Liang Yu was secretly pleased. The opportunity has come. She had already memorized the entire escape route, so she didn't run around like a headless fly like the others. Liang Yu seized the opportunity and led the students out of the 4th life pod. Immediately, several gunshots were heard from inside. Fortunately, they ran out in time. They finally couldn't help but start shooting. Liang Yu couldn't care about that anymore. Her only wish at this moment was to lead the students out of West Mountain Base. The dozen or so students followed her closely, not daring to relax for a moment. Liang Yu was also aware that the armed forces of West Mountain Base were not to be underestimated. Once the electricity was restored, quelling such a scale of unrest would be easy. They had to speed up. As they passed by a stairwell, they suddenly saw 2 soldiers guarding with guns. Seeing the situation turn sour, the soldiers were about to raise their guns to stop them. Liang Yu didn't hesitate, activated her ability, swung her sword, and charged forward. The 2 soldiers hadn't even figured out what was happening before they were instantly beheaded. Liang Yu knew that the appearance of these 2 soldiers meant that the higher-ups of West Mountain Base had begun to restore order. If they didn't leave now, more soldiers would surely appear. The stairs leading to the surface from the base were long. Soon, a bright light appeared ahead. The students were overjoyed, almost reaching the exit. At this moment, Liang Yu extended her hand to block the students behind her. There was a sinister figure ahead. Suddenly, a familiar sound of high heels echoed, only to hear the shadow coldly say, "Liang Yu, you traitor, dare to come back." At this moment, everyone realized that in front of them were over 30 fully armed Special Forces members. Guro played with her fringe. Lord Chen is truly wise to have guessed that some would try to escape amidst the chaos. Guro signaled the soldiers beside her to get into formation. "Did you think West Mountain Base is a place you can come and go as you please? The only outcome for those who attempt to escape the base is to become food for the lower classes. Liang Yu, you traitor, you were given a good life but didn't appreciate it, and now you're even willing to risk your life for these worthless test subjects." Hearing the word food, the students' faces turned pale. Were they using people as food? Was the yogurt-like substance they had been eating made from corpses? Some people started to vomit. At this point, Liang Yu suddenly extended her hand. "Wait, I think we can still talk." Guro, however, responded coldly, "What is there left to talk about with you? A traitor is a traitor and must not be tolerated." Just a second before Garo gestured to open fire, a soldier suddenly fell, shot. Zhang Yi, holding a silenced sniper rifle, had arrived behind them. Garo's face turned pale instantly. Then she loudly ordered her soldiers to return fire. In no time, the entire narrow passage was covered in gunfire. Liang Yu had the students lie down against the walls while she herself charged forward with her long sword, knowing that Zhang Yi and his team had arrived to support them. With this backup, Liang Yu's confidence surged. The soldiers of West Mountain Base were attacked from both sides by powerful mutants, overwhelmed in both close combat and ranged attacks. After Zhang Yi opened the dimensional gate, all their shots became meaningless. In just 2 minutes, the narrow passage was filled with dismembered limbs. Liang Yu, regaining her senses and looking gratefully at Zhang Yi, said, "Thank you for your support." Zhang Yi simply replied, "Don't mention it." He understood that without Liang Yu's risky return to the base as an insider, he would have had no chance to change the missile coordinates. Helping her rescue the students was only natural. Thinking this, Zhang Yi said to Liang Yu, "There's no time to lose. Hurry and get them out of here." Liang Yu quickly calmed the frightened students. "Everyone, move quickly. We're about to be free." At this moment, Liang Yu saw Garo curled up in a corner. Liang Yu stared at Garo intently and said, "I heard it was your idea that led to the death of my students, right?" Fear was written all over Garo's face. "Please, don't kill me. I'm just a secretary." All those decisions were made by Lord Chen himself. Yi Xiaotian, filled with hatred, walked over. The experiments he had undergone for human modification were like climbing out of the 18 layers of hell. Now, faced with Garo's pleas, he didn't say a word before pulling out a dagger and slicing her throat. Afterward, he simply stated, "People like her are not worth pitying." Liang Yu approached Zhang Yi sincerely and said, "Thank you for keeping your word. You helped me save the students. What can I do for you next?" Zhang Yi told Liang Yu, "The guards at the entrance have all been dealt with. There's no time to waste. Your students must leave quickly." Saying this, Zhang Yi took out 2 backpacks from another space. "Here are energy bars to restore strength and some fuel for warmth. First, go hide in the district 5 kilometers southeast of here. I will come to meet you later." Then, Zhang Yi pointed at Liang Yu and said, "You can't leave yet. You need to lead the way for us. We'll go in together soon." The students, hearing this, looked terrified. "Teacher can't leave us. If by any chance pursuers come after us, we have no power to resist. Then we're doomed." Zhang Yi smiled and said, "I guess they're too busy to chase you now." However, Zhang Yi's expression suddenly changed. "If we all escape now and West Mountain Base stabilizes the situation here, they will definitely come after us soon. Especially since just now, your teacher Liang and I killed so many of their people. Do you think they would let it go?" Liang Yu understood deep down. From the moment she decided to defect from West Mountain Base, her escape route was already cut off. Even if she escapes from West Mountain Base today, she might still face their endless pursuit in the future. Liang Yu bit her lip weakly and asked, "So, what do we do next?" Zhang Yi smiled slightly. "Isn't it simple? Just blow up their entire base. That way, it's solved once and for all." Liang Yu felt a twinge of reluctance in her heart. There are so many people inside. Those are thousands of living lives. But if we don't root out the problem, she and the students will eventually face retaliation. By then, it will be them who die. After pondering for a moment, Liang Yu made up her mind. "I'll help you." She knew she didn't have much time left. Given the situation, this might be the only path she could choose. Liang Yu instructed Yi Xiaotian, who was beside her. "Yi Xiaotian, you lead the way. We will come to find you guys as soon as we're done here." Yi Xiaotian glanced at Zhang Yi and the others, then said to Liang Yu, "Teacher Liang, you must protect yourself." Then he led the students out of the base. At this point, Liang Yu didn't know how much she could help. She was aware of the gap in strength between herself and Ling Feng. Zhang Yi handed his phone to Liang Yu. "We must act quickly. Take us to this location." That location was the second life pod, where she had always lived and was very familiar with. Liang Yu nodded. "Follow me." The 4 of them immediately put on helmets and sprinted towards the designated location. Zhang Yi and his team quickly arrived at the central location, which was ideal for placing explosives. Zhang Yi signaled Uncle Yu and Chun Lei, "Start the operation." The 2 nodded and quickly took out timed explosives from their backpacks, placing them in various hidden corners. Seeing this, Liang Yu said anxiously, "This amount of explosives won't have any effect. The sturdiness here is beyond your imagination. Your ordinary C4 won't make a dent." Zhang Yi calmly responded, "These are explosives specially made by Liu Karen." While speaking, Zhang Yi activated the dimensional gate, and the next second, piles of explosives landed in the corners. Liang Yu's eyes widened in shock. These bombs look somewhat familiar at first glance. Upon closer thought, aren't these the same explosives Ling Feng used to bomb the shelter? You actually kept these things? Zhang Yi chuckled. "I, Zhang Yi, have always been frugal, never wasting a grain of rice. Now, let them taste their own medicine." After setting everything up, Zhang Yi signaled to quickly evacuate. On their way out, Zhang Yi also attached explosives to every door they passed. When they reached a corner, Liang Yu suddenly stopped. She looked towards the end of the second life pod and said, "Why don't we take this opportunity to directly eliminate Qinxinyan? Without their leader, the base will surely fall into chaos." Clenching her long sword, the thought of her students being killed by Qinxinyan's orders filled Liang Yu with deep hatred, especially since that old man had manipulated her students words, which disgusted her as a woman. Zhang Yi also stopped and, without turning back, said with a laugh, "Even if we kill Chen Xinyan, someone will quickly take his place. Have you not considered that the problem is not the person Chen Xinyan but the system of West Mountain Base itself?" Liang Yu found herself unable to argue because she too felt that the truth was as Zhang Yi had said. Zhang Yi continued, "The only solution now is to destroy the entire base. Otherwise, no matter who takes over as the leader, the result will be the same." During their conversation, their unusual behavior caught the attention of the Special Forces. They were all wearing Special Forces uniforms, especially Liang Yu, who was wearing a captain's uniform. Under the insufficient light and chaotic situation, no one would normally notice anything odd about them. However, one of the Special Forces members noticed their peculiar behavior, especially the spotted cat beside Zhang Yi. West Mountain Base has never heard of anyone keeping a pet. The soldier raised his gun and shouted, "There's something wrong with these people. Seize them." Zhang Yi had no choice but to immediately activate his ability, quadrupling his speed. He enhanced his speed to the maximum and quickly fired a shot in retaliation. The person hadn't even reacted before their head was pierced through instantly. When the Special Forces saw their teammate fall, they raised their AKs and began shooting wildly at Zhang Yi and his team. By this time, Zhang Yi had already opened the dimensional gate, blocking all angles in the narrow corridor while calmly raising his handgun, hitting his targets with almost every shot. Liang Yu was astonished behind him. After following Ling Feng for a month, they couldn't take down his shelter. "I only knew that Zhang Yi's ability was troublesome, but now I see he possesses such powerful defensive capabilities that are almost monstrous." Before long, someone in the crowd shouted, "This is a spatial ability. This person is Zhang Yi." Everyone stopped shooting, retreat and spread out. The person shouting was Shen Hong, one of the first Special Forces soldiers who had attacked Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi smiled and muttered, "Recognizing me now is too late." Then he dramatically shouted, "Counterattack." Suddenly, all the bullets that had been fired at them were sent back like a storm in the opposite direction, hitting almost everyone. Only a few managed to block the bullets using the bodies of their comrades. However, as Zhang Yi and his team were retreating, dozens of grenades flew out from the dimensional gate, engulfing the corridor in an explosion and turning the scene into a sea of fire. The dozens of grenades Zhang Yi threw caused a massive commotion. They knew they couldn't stay there much longer. If the base's power was restored and they were surrounded, it would be troublesome since the dimensional gate couldn't defend against multiple angles at once. Just then, Zhang Yi noticed the lights above start to flicker, indicating the base's electrical system was about to come back on. He was well aware that once West Mountain Base's systems were back online, the explosives they had placed could potentially be discovered in advance. While it was unlikely all the explosives could be defused quickly, it would still give them time to move. At this moment, the news of Zhang Yi's infiltration and Liang Yu's betrayal reached Chen Xinyan. Furious, he immediately issued a death order. Zhang Yi must be eliminated. While donning his specially made combat suit, Chen Xinyan furiously cursed, "Zhang Yi, you arrogant brat, the advantage is mine this time. You're doomed. Coming here on your own, without the protection of your shelter, I'll chop you up into a protein shake." Ling Feng immediately took his team, filled with rage, to seek vengeance on Zhang Yi. His eyes brimmed with a murderous intent, determined to settle both new and old scores with Zhang Yi once and for all. However, the second life pod was also in chaos. After the power was restored, people discovered that C4 explosives were plastered everywhere. While these explosives weren't enough to destroy the walls and collapse the base, the series of small explosions would consume a significant amount of the internal oxygen and drastically increase the internal temperature, ultimately leading to the death of everyone inside. Ling Feng couldn't care less at this point. "Quickly arrange for bomb disposal experts to clear them," he ordered, before striding outside to pursue. Right now, nothing was more important to him than killing Zhang Yi. Along the way, Zhang Yi and his team encountered numerous troubles. No matter which direction they tried to escape, they saw heavily armed soldiers. Following the orders from above, they did everything they could to delay Zhang Yi and the others, buying time for Ling Feng and other mutant leaders to catch up. They no longer just shot blindly, knowing that Zhang Yi's ability would send all the bullets right back at them. Faced with the onslaught of Special Forces soldiers, Uncle Yu stepped forward. "Let me handle this." As he activated his ability, his muscles visibly swelled at an astonishing speed, instantly bursting through his durable combat suit and transforming him into a muscle giant over 2 meters tall. The next second, he charged into the crowd like a tank, bullets no longer causing him substantial harm. Uncle Yu was like a titan, clearing the obstacles in his path like a bulldozer, sending any soldiers attempting to block him flying instantly. Zhang Yi didn't forget to caution, "Be careful, Uncle Yu." Using his body to take bullets head-on was something Zhang Yi hadn't anticipated. Uncle Yu chuckled, "Don't worry about me. This is nothing to me." He was well aware of his ability's powerful self-healing capability. "As long as it's not a fatal injury, I can heal rapidly." Just then, several armored Special Forces soldiers suddenly charged in front of them. Among them, Zhang Yi recognized two, Shen Hong and Yu Lang. They were from the team that first attacked the shelter, where all their teammates died at Zhang Yi's hands except for these two who were lucky to survive. With such such deep-seated hatred, Shenhong was instantly enraged. Zhang Yi, you won't escape from here today. These few were likely modified humans who had undergone cell transplantation from Ling Feng. Knowing Zhang Yi's abilities, they decided to use melee weapons. Uncle Yu stepped in front of Zhang Yi and his team, scoffing, if you want to get to Zhang Yi, you'll have to get past me first. As the 5 modified humans faced off against Uncle Yu, Zhang Yi watched anxiously. Unexpectedly, at the moment of contact, Uncle Yu simply swung his arm fiercely, sending all 5 flying. They were embedded into the wall, unable to extricate themselves. Seeing this, Zhang Yi laughed. These half-baked modified mutants thinking they can go head-to-head with a natural mutant is simply delusional. Uncle Yu looked puzzled. Is that it? Unbeknownst to him, his body was continuously becoming stronger through mutation, while these modified humans were inherently flawed. The mutated cells were consuming their normal cells, ultimately weakening them further. Uncle Yu was somewhat disappointed. Since gaining his powerful strength, he hadn't had a real chance to engage in a serious fight with anyone. This left the veteran somewhat restless, having only faced weak opponents. Zhang Yi remarked, what I dislike the most is fighting. Isn't it better to live our lives comfortably? Why insist on expanding conflicts and killings? As they were quickly retreating, a cold laugh came from ahead. Thinking of running? It won't be that easy. A tall figure approached, carrying something resembling an explosive tank on his back. The gold stars on the shoulder of his combat suit indicated his rank as a team leader. Zhang Yi immediately recognized him. This was the mutant known as Fan Zun, codenamed Fireman in the files. Zhang Yi quickly opened the dimensional gate. Fan Zun spread his hands, and suddenly, a massive fire dragon surged towards Zhang Yi. Although the dimensional gate swallowed the fire dragon entirely, Fan Zun's assault did not cease. Zhang Yi realized that he was being delayed. Once the dimensional gate was activated, Zhang Yi couldn't move, meaning unless Fan Zun stopped, Zhang Yi had no way to leave. The temperature of the fire dragon released by Fan Zun could instantly reach thousands of degrees Celsius. If Zhang Yi closed the gate, everyone would be engulfed in flames, but keeping it open would allow more special forces soldiers to catch up. Caught between a rock and a hard place, Zhang Yi shouted to Chunlei, Chubby, it's up to you. After his words fell, Zhang Yi's dimensional gate suddenly spewed out a vast amount of ice and snow, instantly overcoming Fan Zun's fire dragon. Fan Zun stepped back with disdain, saying, trivial tricks. Then he took out the canister from behind and started pouring its contents on the ground. It was his specially formulated fuel, which, when ignited, was as potent as explosives. He filled the entire corridor with a black oily substance, stepped back a few steps, and snapped his fingers lightly. Instantly, a wave of heat burst from the ground, engulfing the entire corridor in flames. Fan Zun stood in the middle of the blaze, unscathed, not even a flicker of flame touching the hem of his clothes. Fan Zun confidently stated, our team leader will be here soon. Let's see how long you can hold out. Thankfully, Zhang Yi had also collected a large amount of ice and snow in the dimensional space, allowing Chunlei to unleash his ability when the ice was released. The clash of ice and fire filled the entire corridor with steam. Fan Zun was momentarily stunned. They actually have a mutant who can manipulate ice and snow. There was no record of Chunlei in their data, as no one had seen him take action before. Taking advantage of the moment Chunlei was holding off Fan Zun, Zhang Yi and his team quickly retreated through the steam. Suddenly, a terrifying gust of wind came from ahead. Uncle Yu didn't have time to see what was happening when a gigantic fist was already bearing down on him. Instinctively crossing his arms to block, there was a loud bang, and Uncle Yu was sent flying back several meters, barely managing to steady himself in a kneeling position. Seeing this, Zhang Yi inwardly gasped. Uncle Yu, known for his physical strength, was left in such a state by a single hit. He moved back to Uncle Yu's side, concerned. Uncle Yu, are you alright? Uncle Yu was drenched in sweat. Thanks to the stimulant, he didn't feel much pain. He joked lightly, it's not too bad. Should be nothing fatal. Ling Feng stood about 10 meters away from Zhang Yi. Having a rough understanding of spatial abilities and learning from his previous painful lesson, he knew better than to approach hastily, likely falling into Zhang Yi's trap. He decided to wait it out, knowing they had nowhere to escape. Chunlei also hurried over, sweating profusely at the sight of Uncle Yu's injuries. Uncle Yu, are you okay? Uncle Yu's forehead was covered in sweat. I'm fine. Just feels like I've been hit by a train. Zhang Yi took out a stimulant from the dimensional space and without a second thought, injected it directly into Uncle Yu's arm. Concerns about side effects were set aside for now. It was crucial for Uncle Yu to quickly regain his combat strength. Uncle Yu understood Zhang Yi's intention. At this time, Flower also came over, visibly angered by the situation. Its fur bristled as it began to growl menacingly. Liang Yu also took a combat stance, ready to fight. Zhang Yi then halted them. Don't be rash. They can't get to us now. However, Ling Feng continued to press forward. After their last encounter, he had learned that Zhang Yi's dimensional space lacked the ability to attack proactively. He knew as long as he didn't venture into it himself, Zhang Yi couldn't do much against him. As the standoff continued, Ling Feng started to taunt. Without the protection of your turtle shell shelter, do you think you can escape? Just give up and surrender. Maybe I'll spare your life. More and more special forces soldiers were gathering on both sides. Fortunately, after receiving the the second injection, Uncle Yu's powerful self-healing ability had nearly restored him to full strength. Zhang Yi, with a furrowed brow, said, "So it has come to this after all. It seems my plan was too idealistic." Just then, a woman cloaked in a cape appeared behind Ling Feng. She softly called out Zhang Yi's name. Zhang Yi instinctively glanced at her. In that moment of eye contact, Zhang Yi felt as if he was being pulled into an abyss by an invisible force. It was Yironghua, whose ability was to hypnotize through eye contact. But the next second, Yironghua clutched her eyes, screaming in pain, while others fell into a hallucinatory state. Zhang Yi smirked. "I forgot to tell you, my dimensional space can reflect your brainwaves back at you." At this time, Flower's body began to grow larger. Taking advantage of their momentary mental lapse, everyone quickly climbed onto Flower's body. At Zhang Yi's command, they madly ran towards the exit of the corridor. Zhang Yi then opened the dimensional gate and simultaneously threw out hundreds of grenades from the dimensional space. Ling Feng and his team had just begun to regain their composure when they were instantly engulfed in a sea of flames. The corridor echoed with continuous explosions. Chun-Lei, worried, asked Zhang Yi, "Boss, the big one we set up hasn't been defused, has it? Otherwise, all our efforts will have been wasted." Zhang Yi replied solemnly, "There's no way they could have in this short amount of time. Besides, we left so many C4 explosives along the way, they wouldn't have had time to defuse that big one in the corner. Once we're out, we'll detonate it." As Flower charged madly, Ling Feng and his team took shelter inside the walls during the explosions. Suddenly, with a roar, Ling Feng punched through a half-meter thick wall. "Hurry up and chase," he bellowed before dashing forward. Suddenly, Su Mingxie exerted himself, his body beginning to twist and swell, transforming into a 2-meter-tall humanoid creature. He grabbed Yironghua with one hand and Fang Zun with the other, and followed Ling Feng in a fierce chase. Seeing that they were about to be caught up, Chun-Lei urgently told Zhang Yi, "Boss, throw more grenades to stop them, at least to delay them a bit." But this time, Zhang Yi unusually said, "I, Zhang Yi, am not the kind of person who takes advantage of others' vulnerabilities. If they like chasing, let them chase." Chun-Lei and Uncle Yu were speechless. That statement coming from you doesn't sound convincing at all. However, they also knew Zhang Yi has always been willing to use any means to achieve his ends, not rashly using his spatial ability. He must have his reasons. So, the group didn't dwell on further questions. After all, with Flower's speed, it wouldn't be easy for Ling Feng and his team to catch up. A few seconds later, Flower leaped out of the opening, and they finally emerged onto the ground of West Mountain Base. Ling Feng and his team also rushed to the door soon after. Once bitten, twice shy, Ling Feng didn't dare to approach rashly but just stood at the entrance, staring intently at Zhang Yi and his group. He was well aware that no one could escape under his watch, especially in the vast snowy terrain. "Your dimensional space, Zhang Yi, is only invincible in one direction. If I just avoid that side and attack from all other angles, you can't escape." Chun-Lei realized the dire situation. Without the narrow corridors of the base, Zhang Yi's spatial defense couldn't block Ling Feng's abnormally fast attacks. "Boss, what do we do now?" A cold smirk appeared on Ling Feng's lips, his eyes filled with the thrill of revenge. Then he mockingly said, "Without the protection of your turtle shell shelter, where can you run now?" Zhang Yi sighed. "When will this cycle of vengeance end?" While speaking, Zhang Yi's right hand pulled out a remote control from his pocket and pressed it hard. Seeing this, Ling Feng panicked. "What's that in your hand?" Zhang Yi didn't answer Ling Feng's question, but kept pressing the button. Just 2 seconds later, a muffled sound came from behind them, and the ground shook violently. Before they could steady themselves, a wave of heat surged from behind, followed by a fire dragon erupting from the corridor entrance. Everyone's attention was on Zhang Yi, paying no heed to the anomaly behind them. Suddenly, they were all swept away by the scorching blast. Chun-Lei's eyes sparkled with excitement. "It's finally done. West Mountain Base is destroyed." They all showed relieved smiles. Ling Feng clenched his fists and roared, "Damn you, Zhang Yi, what have you done?" Zhang Yi responded with a teasing tone, "You know, I should actually thank you. Remember that big bundle of TNT you left when you attacked my shelter? I've returned it all to you. To keep up with the tradition of giving and receiving, I even added a bit more as a return gift. I must say, your explosives really are quite effective." Zhang Yi, with a somewhat provoking tone, said, "If it weren't for Captain Ling's generous gift, we couldn't have produced such high-yield explosives ourselves. After all, in this snowy wilderness, there's nowhere to gather materials." Ling Feng turned to look at the destroyed base, feeling a chill in his heart. "The base that I relied on for survival has been destroyed like this, and even using my own explosives." He even felt an impulse to go back and rescue people, but after such an explosion, there's likely no chance of any survivors. Ling Feng's eyes were nearly bleeding with rage. "Today, I will make you pay in blood." Just then, Zhang Yi suddenly extended his hand. "Wait, you need to think this through. There are 4 mutants on our side, making it 4v4 on this level. But your fireman is practically a joke here, and your hypnotist lady has been backfired by her own illusion. Now it's just you and that big guy. Those special forces soldiers behind you are hardly a threat. All 4 of us are combat specialists. Are you confident you can defeat us? Even if you're more powerful, it will end in mutual destruction. Even if we can't kill you, we're absolutely sure we can take down all your brothers." brothers. Why bother? You don't need to look so aggrieved. It was you who attacked me first. This is self-defense on my part. I don't owe you anything. Ling Feng coldly responded. Don't talk to me about this nonsense. Today, it's either you die or I do. Hearing this, Zhang Yi suddenly laughed darkly. By your logic, your target is just me, right? Ling Feng was growing impatient, unsure of what trick Zhang Yi was planning next. All he wanted was a swift conclusion. Stop with the nonsense. Prepare to die. Zhang Yi was fearless. He stepped forward and loudly told Ling Feng, since your target is me, I don't think we need to gamble with our brothers' lives. Zhang Yi provocatively beckoned with his hand and said, Ling Feng, this is a grudge between the two of us. Do you dare to face me one-on-one? Upon hearing this proposition, everyone was astonished. Liang Yu quickly pulled Zhang Yi aside and urgently said, have you lost your mind? Do you not realize how insanely powerful he is? Zhang Yi ignored Liang Yu and continued to address Ling Feng. If we fight, it will be mutually destructive. Even if you win, you'll suffer heavy losses. Since you're after me, let's settle this with a one-on-one fight. If I win, you let us go, and our grudge ends here. If I lose, you can do whatever you want with me. I know you won't let me live. Please, don't harm my brothers. This matter doesn't involve them. Chun Lei and Uncle Yu looked at Zhang Yi with skepticism, remembering what Zhang Yi had told them before they set off. Zhang Yi had explained the special forces of West Mountain Base are all well-trained soldiers who now possess abilities. Their combat coordination is something we can't match. If it comes down to it, I'll challenge their leader to a duel. Ling Feng has a high opinion of himself and probably sees me as a coward who only relies on spatial abilities. They don't really understand my ability, so he'll likely accept my challenge. In a one-on-one duel, I believe I have a chance. At the time, both of them thought Zhang Yi was insane. After all, based on the data, Ling Feng was seen as the perfect soldier, and challenging him seemed like a death wish. Xing Xuerong also warned Ling Feng, kid is very cunning. Be careful, it might be a trick. Let's just fight them directly. Ling Feng was well aware internally, Zhang Yi must be plotting something. After all, I've suffered enough at his hands before. However, Ling Feng also had his own concerns. Zhang Yi was right, my side has been severely weakened, and Liang Yu's combat prowess cannot be underestimated. The other Special Forces members are probably no match for her. The muscle man might not be able to beat Su Mingjie, but the difference shouldn't be too significant. The chubby guy might seem like a waste, but his performance in the underground showed his potential. With the current icy terrain giving him home advantage, I can't be sure of his strength. Most importantly, that peculiar calico cat, considering its speed during the escape, it could also be a tough opponent. We know too little about their lineup. Rushing into battle might ensure victory, but likely at the cost of more of my brothers. I've already lost too much. I can't drag my brothers down with me. After some thought, Ling Feng accepted Zhang Yi's proposal. One-on-one it is. Just don't back out. The location will be that valley over there. No one else is allowed to enter. Xing Xuerong was still apprehensive. Captain Ling, be careful. It might be a trap. Ling Feng scoffed. Don't worry. In the face of absolute power, all schemes and tricks are meaningless. The two had now arrived at the valley. Tensions were high outside the valley, but Xing Xuerong and the others appeared more confident. They were well aware of Ling Feng's capabilities. In a one-on-one fight, Ling Feng losing was impossible. On the other hand, Chun Lei and his companions were visibly worried. Zhang Yi had said in the car that he wouldn't opt for a one-on-one plan unless absolutely necessary, implying even Zhang Yi himself wasn't very confident. Xing Xuerong, observing Chun Lei and the others trying to maintain their composure, suddenly revealed a mocking smile. At this point, I might as well share a little secret with you. Some powerful mutants have the ability to absorb others' powers. It's like everyone has a fixed level, but I alone can level up. Captain Ling is one of those mutants. He has single-handedly killed 3 mutants before and taken their powers, so his abilities might surpass all of ours combined. Your Zhang Yi is simply overestimating himself. Upon hearing this, Uncle Yu and the others couldn't help but become anxious. Chun Lei, gritting his teeth, muttered, impossible. Our boss never fights a battle he's not sure of. He would never risk his life this time either. Xing Xuerong, somewhat speechless at this logic, said, what kind of reasoning is that? Just wait. Soon our Captain Ling will definitely be dragging his body out. Meanwhile, in the valley, Zhang Yi looked at Ling Feng, who was ready to fight, and sighed, actually, my ability is more auxiliary. It's at a disadvantage against combat types like you. How about we don't fight? Ling Feng laughed, feeling embarrassed to admit defeat in front of everyone just now. Stop the nonsense and prepare to die. Zhang Yi, with a helpless expression, said, actually, I hate fighting. You forced this on me. My dream is simple. I just wanted to thrive in this apocalypse. Listening to him, Ling Feng felt irritated. Can you stop beating around the bush and fight me like a man? Delaying has no meaning. Zhang Yi weakly said, now, I just hope you keep your promise. If I lose, please spare my friends, especially that cute calico cat. Don't think about eating it. If you don't want to keep it, just set it free. It has a big appetite. I'm afraid you won't be able to afford its meals. By this time, Ling Feng was visibly furious, veins throbbing with anger. Stop whining like a woman. If it's a fight you want, it's a fight you'll get. As soon as he finished speaking, Ling Feng couldn't hold back any longer and charged fiercely towards Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi, without hesitation, activated quadruple speed speed, boosting his velocity to the maximum. He then opened the dimensional gate to block Ling Feng's path. However, after several exchanges, Ling Feng had become familiar with this dimensional door tactic. A cold smile appeared on his lips. Still the same old trick. Isn't there anything new? As long as my speed exceeds Zhang Yi's ability to switch the gates, I can end him with a stab from my military spike. But as he moved, Ling Feng suddenly found a massive truck falling towards him from above. Instinctively, he dodged to the side, wondering, can Zhang Yi's ability also throw objects? This was unexpected for Ling Feng, but he thought such child's play couldn't possibly affect him. Zhang Yi smirked. That's just the appetizer. The main show was yet to come. He then took out a mountain of vehicles from the dimensional space, including trucks, sports cars, and even excavators, all collected by Zhang Yi in his spare time, initially intended for collection but now perfectly suited for throwing. Despite Ling Feng's incredible speed, facing such a barrage left him struggling to cope. Then, pulling out a war blade from behind, Ling Feng thought if he couldn't dodge, he'd directly confront and destroy them. Accompanied by a thunderous roar, a truck weighing tens of tons was split into two by his blade. Seeing this, Zhang Yi became even more excited. I want to see if you can split faster than I can release. Zhang Yi, as if dumping trash, continuously released various objects from the dimensional space. Though Ling Feng possessed perfect close combat abilities, he found this type of attack bothersome. Dodging and speaking simultaneously, he said, "Do you really think these little tricks can hurt me? You're underestimating me." Zhang Yi, retreating continuously while laughing, responded, "If that's the case, why are you dodging?" As Ling Feng desperately dodged and slashed through the debris, he thought, there's no way to get close to Zhang Yi. I don't believe you have an endless supply of things to throw. Now, with the dimensional gates area sufficiently large, it wasn't easy for Ling Feng to bypass it. Furthermore, he couldn't use firearms at this moment. If he could get within 3 to 5 meters of Zhang Yi, he was confident he could instantly kill him. However, Zhang Yi's releases became increasingly varied. Ling Feng could slice through ordinary objects, but the fluttering, colorful women's clothing gave him a headache. He could split a truck with one strike, but was helpless against these light, lacy materials that severely obstructed his vision in the windy valley. To him, this shameless tactic seemed more insulting than harmful. While he struggled to cope, Zhang Yi opportunistically threw out a large number of iron barrels and logs. Sensing something was off, Ling Feng realized the danger if the barrels contained flammable or explosive substances. As he suspected, the barrels were filled with gasoline, all with their lids open. Despite his efforts to dodge, he couldn't avoid being splashed. Ling Feng, sensing the impending danger, decided to move away from the gasoline area. At that moment, Zhang Yi took out a handgun from the dimensional space and fired at the ground near Ling Feng's feet. Instantly, flames soared into the sky, engulfing Ling Feng in a sea of fire. After Ling Feng was swallowed by the towering flames, Zhang Yi didn't stop his assault, aware that such intense fire couldn't burn Ling Feng to death. The military-grade special combat suit Ling Feng wore was hardly vulnerable to ordinary flames. However, the fire could still obstruct his vision, at least rendering his high-tech glasses unusable. Ling Feng leaped up, shouting in Zhang Yi's direction, "Your despicable tactics can't touch me. I admit your defensive capabilities are strong, but you can't cause me any real harm. Your actions are no different from a clown's." Ling Feng disdained Zhang Yi's unconventional methods of attack. Finally breaking free from the ring of fire, he found himself under a shower of several iron barrels. This time, they weren't filled with gasoline but a milky white, unidentified liquid. When the barrels hit the ground and burst open, despite Ling Feng's agility, he couldn't avoid getting drenched in the sticky white substance. Seeing this, Ling Feng was on the verge of madness. What on earth is this stuff? That's when he realized it was strong latex paint. "You despicable villain, playing these disgusting tricks." Ling Feng roared in anger, but upon closer inspection, Ling Feng was nearly driven mad. His rage fully ignited. Tearing off his clothes, he roared, "Dare to show off such petty tricks in front of me? I'll show you how I'll end you." Ling Feng thought, as long as I endure until he runs out of things to throw, I can split his head in two with a single strike. But just as he was making out Zhang Yi's faint silhouette, hundreds of iron barrels rolled out from in front of him. The barrels, all open and stirred by the valley's cold wind, spread the scent of the sea instantly. Upon inhaling this dust, Ling Feng's eyes filled with intense fear, and his face turned exceedingly red. He quickly covered his mouth and nose. Zhang Yi looked at Ling Feng and said calmly, "I believe everyone has a weakness. No one can be so perfect. Take our invincible Captain Ling Feng, for instance. Impenetrable to blades and as fast as lightning. But who would have thought he'd be allergic to seafood?" Zhang Yi continued provocatively, "This powder is made from grinding over 100 types of seafood. I assure you, one of them will trigger your allergic reaction optimally." The entire valley was now filled with seafood powder. Ling Feng held his breath, unable to believe what was unfolding. He couldn't understand how Zhang Yi discovered his weakness. Knowing he couldn't continue like this, Ling Feng, mustering his energy, charged towards Zhang Yi, ready for a desperate fight. Seeing this, Zhang Yi activated quadruple speed and took off running, taunting, "Bye-bye now." Despite Ling Feng's effort to push through, determined to capture Zhang Yi's caution permeated every cell well, maintaining a safe distance from Ling Feng. After just 2 minutes, Ling Feng's complexion turned the color of liver. Clutching his throat, he collapsed to the ground in agony. Seeing him motionless in the snow, Zhang Yi discreetly maintained a distance of several tens of meters before casually pulling out a barbecue grill from the dimensional space and leisurely began cooking sausages to replenish his energy, bringing silence to the valley. After about 15 minutes, what seemed like a thoroughly defeated Ling Feng suddenly sprang up. Ling Feng roared in anger, "Zhang Yi, you despicable villain, I'll fight you to the end." Ling Feng charged furiously, his face a gruesome sight, almost resembling a pig's head, making his attack seem rather comical. Zhang Yi took off running. "So, playing dead just now, huh?" I must say, that acting was explosive. As a super soldier, Ling Feng always carried anti-allergy medication, hoping to fake his death to lower Zhang Yi's guard and seize the opportunity for a surprise attack. However, he didn't anticipate Zhang Yi's cautiousness. Not only did Zhang Yi not fall for it, but he also took the time to eat and replenish his energy by the fire. Zhang Yi could afford to wait, but Ling Feng couldn't. The anti-allergy medication could only relieve the symptoms temporarily. With the valley still filled with seafood powder, Ling Feng continued his pursuit despite the allergic reaction rapidly deteriorating his physical condition, his consciousness starting to blur. Never would he have imagined that his unmatched close combat skills would succumb to such a low tactic. Ling Feng finally collapsed, this time not getting up again. Seeing Ling Feng attempt the same trick, Zhang Yi maintained his distance, warmed himself by the fire, and continued to eat and regain his strength. Half an hour passed, and Zhang Yi had replenished his energy, his physical condition nearly optimal. Looking at Ling Feng lying motionless on the ground, he muttered, "He can't really be dead, right? But after so long, playing dead doesn't seem likely." Thinking this, he pulled out a handgun and fired directly through Ling Feng's head. Seems like he's really dead. Zhang Yi felt a surge of elation, hardly believing he had defeated Ling Feng, West Mountain Base's top combatant. Then, Zhang Yi pulled out a massive truck from the dimensional space, smashing it down heavily onto Ling Feng. Ling Feng's frozen body was instantly cut in half. Zhang Yi finally breathed a sigh of relief. Looks like he's thoroughly dead. Even if he were acting, it couldn't have gone this far. Seeing this, Zhang Yi retrieved the dragon's roar blade from the dimensional space, swiftly decapitating Ling Feng in one clean stroke. Only with this level of caution did Zhang Yi finally feel completely at ease. "I won. I really won." After confirming Ling Feng was completely dead, Zhang Yi crouched down to examine his head. Suddenly, he felt a strong urge driving his right hand towards Ling Feng's skull. A wonderful and powerful force surged from his palm into his body, exhilarating like an electric current. He had absorbed the power of the wall-passing woman before, but if that power was a stream, then Ling Feng's power was a mighty river. It was an incredibly refreshing sensation. Quickly, he absorbed all of Ling Feng's power. However, Zhang Yi was unaware that Ling Feng had also absorbed the power of 3 mutants, meaning all those powers now belonged to Zhang Yi alone. Suddenly, Zhang Yi's vision blurred as if something was about to burst forth. He blinked hard, the overwhelming power momentarily clouding his mind. He couldn't see the intense blue light in his pupils, only feeling a sharp, yet vague sensation in his eyes. Looking at the large truck that had been pressing down on Ling Feng, he instinctively released an unknown force. The space in front of him twisted like a spiral, followed by a loud boom. The truck was twisted and broken apart. Zhang Yi was ecstatic inside. Could this be a new ability? He touched his right eye. Isn't this the legendary divine power to twist space and break objects? Zhang Yi realized that by absorbing Ling Feng's power, he had developed a new ability, compensating for his previous lack of offensive capabilities. Firearms had become ineffective against combat-type mutants, but this ability was different. It could twist and break a steel-made truck, let alone a human body. After using this power, Zhang Yi felt as if his energy was half drained. It seems this ability consumes a lot. At this rate, I can probably use it up to 3 times in succession. He estimated the attack range to be about 300 meters, though not as long as my sniper rifle. The effect of a mid-range surprise attack is definitely remarkable. A single strike can twist a large truck, making this power even stronger than the sniper rifle, and the opponent has no time to defend. It's the perfect ambush move. Zhang Yi looked towards the outside of the valley with a sinister smile. I'm curious to see who will be the first to fall victim to this ability. Zhang Yi did not rush to leave the valley, but continued to eat and replenish his energy. Meanwhile, outside the valley, after waiting for nearly 2 hours, everyone began to subtly change their mindset. According to Manhwa and others' understanding of Ling Feng, killing Zhang Yi should have been as easy as flipping his hand, and he would typically end battles quickly without dragging things out. Why is it taking so long? At this moment, Chun Lei and Uncle Yu exchanged glances, slowly revealing smiles on their faces. This delay tactic is very much in line with Zhang Yi's style of combat. The longer it takes, the more it indicates that Zhang Yi's strategy has succeeded. They knew Zhang Yi was always extremely cautious to the point of being exasperating. If Ling Feng had won, he would have boasted about it immediately. Just then, Uncle Yu and Chun Lei's walkie-talkies crackled to life, and hearing Zhang Yi's voice filled them with immense joy. This meant Zhang Yi had won, and Ling Feng Yifeng was dead. Holding Ling Feng's head, Zhang Yi used the walkie-talkie to caution Chun-Lei and Uncle Yu. Control your expressions. Don't make a fuss for now. Wait for my signal, and then we'll wipe out all their remaining forces. Hearing Zhang Yi's voice, Uncle Yu and Chun-Lei couldn't help but feel overjoyed. The boss had truly won. Suppressing their excitement, they quietly prepared to attack. Zhang Yi did not return by the same path, but silently approached from behind the enemy. After surveying their formation and deliberating, he decided to take out Yirongwa first. Given her powerful crowd control ability through mental hypnosis, though she was physically weaker, Zhang Yi's right eye, wielding the divine power, slowly activated. The space around Yirongwa's neck began to twist. She suddenly felt discomfort and was about to cry for help, but could only utter the word help before her neck was torn apart by an unknown force, severing the carotid artery and causing blood to gush out like a fountain. Instantly, her head was separated from her body. Everyone present was shocked, having no idea what had just happened. Zhang Yi then stood up from behind a snow mound, lifting Ling Feng's head high and shouted, "Your Captain Ling has been taken care of by me." While drawing everyone's shocked gazes, Zhang Yi gave the command, "Attack, eliminate them all." Chun-Lei had long been ready to strike. Suddenly, he controlled a vast amount of ice and snow to fiercely attack the opponent. The sky was filled with snow waves, sweeping over like a tsunami. Liang Yu took the brunt of the attack. Uncle Yu and Flower quickly followed, rapidly attacking the opposition. At this time, the Special Forces team, without a leader, was at a loss. Their strongest captain was actually killed by Zhang Yi. Inwardly, they were inevitably shocked and fell into a daze. This led to their morale disintegrating and their combat power sharply decreasing. Moreover, with Yirongwa being instantly killed, everyone lost their will to fight. In contrast, Zhang Yi's side was high in fighting spirit. This led to the battle becoming a one-sided slaughter. They quickly dealt with all of them thoroughly. Zhang Yi then ran over, planning to first absorb the abilities from the corpses. However, this time he felt significantly weaker, even to the point of feeling no improvement. After some thought, Zhang Yi probably understood the reason. It must be because the levels of these mutants are too low, far inferior to Ling Feng just now, and even more so compared to me now. It's like playing a game and leveling up by defeating monsters. Defeating lower-level monsters naturally won't add much experience. Zhang Yi then called Chun-Lei and Uncle Yu to try, but after their attempts, they both shook their heads. They did not have the ability to absorb others' abilities. He did not call Liang Yu. After all, there were still many uncertainties with Liang Yu. Zhang Yi didn't want her to continue to get stronger for the time being. Uncle Yu also said, "The woman whose neck you twisted just now mentioned, not every mutant has this ability. Perhaps you have a higher talent." Zhang Yi, with his arms crossed, pondered, regarding mutants and abilities. "There's still so much I need to understand. I'll study it more when I get back." Just then, Flower suddenly came closer and sniffed at Fan Zun's body, then bit off his head in one go, and with a gulp, swallowed it into her stomach. Zhang Yi, puzzled, asked, "Flower, can you absorb their powers?" Flower nodded slightly. "In that case, leave these people to you as a midnight snack." Immediately after, Zhang Yi arrived at the entrance of the West Mountain base. He opened a different space and threw out a pile of things like trucks and machine tools, effectively blocking the exit. Liang Yu was speechless. Is it necessary to be so cautious? Zhang Yi calmly took out a detonator remote and said lightly, "One must always avoid arrogance and impatience. Remember to complete the finishing touches. After all, caution is the parent of safety." He then detonated the explosives that had been set up in advance. Now, even if the tunnel didn't collapse, it would still be firmly blocked by all that junk metal. Even if someone did survive, it would be impossible for them to dig through this heavy scrap metal and crawl out. Seeing Zhang Yi's actions, Liang Yu couldn't help but express, "Is it really necessary to go to such lengths? Most of the people below are civilians from the fourth life pod." Zhang Yi simply smiled. After all, weeds must be pulled out by the roots. Caution is the parent of safety. But this is not the end yet. Saying this, Zhang Yi took out a snow vehicle and said, "Come with me, I'll take you somewhere." The group traveled through the mountains on the snow vehicle. Zhang Yi opened his phone, which displayed a 3D structure map of the West Mountain base sent by Yang Xinxin. Soon after, they discovered 3 figures on the outskirts of the base in the mountains. Liang Yu was astonished. "You are really meticulous. How did you think of this? And how did you do it?" Zhang Yi smiled faintly. "When I was studying the structure of the West Mountain base, I discovered a special passage connected to the first life pod, surely prepared for a very few individuals." Looking at those figures, and thinking of how her students were mostly killed by him, a dense killing intent gradually surged in Liang Yu's eyes. Liang Yu shouted, "Chen Xinyan, stop right there." Chen Xinyan never expected that Zhang Yi would find their whereabouts so quickly. The recent violent explosion had almost destroyed the entire base. Fortunately, the construction materials of the first life pod were more robust, and thanks to its strong defensive power, the first life pod was not completely destroyed. Feeling a bad premonition, Chen Xinyan immediately ran out from the escape passage, even without having the time to care for his wife and children. "Having barely escaped with my life, am I still destined to ascend to heaven after all?" Watching Zhang Yi get out of the vehicle and approach, Chen Xinyan's face turned even paler than the snow. His heart sank to the bottom. 2 loyal guards, not yet recognizing the situation, situation, actually raised their guns, intending to fight Zhang Yi to the death. Knowing the situation was beyond salvage, Qin Xinyan hurriedly raised his hands and said, "You can't just kill me like this. I, Qin Xinyan, am a prominent figure in Heavenly Sea City. If I die, the balance of Heavenly Sea City will be disrupted. At that time, you will face greater danger." Hearing this, Zhang Yi pondered for a moment. "I indeed haven't considered this issue." However, Zhang Yi then said lightly, "Have you not seen what you look like right now? As a desperate fugitive, do you still think you have the right to negotiate terms with me?" While speaking, everyone had already surrounded the three of them. At this moment, Liang Yu was gripping her longsword tightly. Her dozens of students had become Qin Xinyan's experiments. She wished she could dismember this man on the spot. Qin Xinyan hurriedly tried to explain. "Now is the apocalypse. Harsh measures must be used in chaotic times. Otherwise, everyone is only a dead end. Brother Zhang Yi, I think we can cooperate. With your talent and strength, plus my connections and brains, dominating Heavenly Sea City would be a piece of cake." Zhang Yi smirked. "I'm not interested in that." Saying this, he activated his divine power, and Qin Xinyan's neck twisted instantaneously. The next second, his head burst open like a watermelon. The two guards were immediately petrified, desperately kneeling and crying. Zhang Yi coldly smiled. "With the likes of you dominating Heavenly Sea City, go see your ghosts." After dealing with Qin Xinyan, the top leader of the West Mountain Base, his two loyal subordinates actually pulled the pins of their grenades, wanting to die together with Zhang Yi. At this moment, Zhang Yi, still with the stimulation of adrenaline in his system, instantly pulled out a handgun with lightning speed, and with 2 shots, he pierced through both men's knees. They fell to the ground, powerless, but they still desperately threw the grenades towards Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi, without any hurry, opened a dimensional gate, absorbing all the explosive energy of the grenades into the different space. The soldiers were dumbfounded. They couldn't understand what had just happened. Zhang Yi slowly approached a soldier, released the energy he had just absorbed, and a surge of energy violently erupted. In just a few seconds, the soldier was burned down to a skeletal structure. Then Zhang Yi grabbed another soldier's head with his right hand, activated his ability again, and with a boom, the soldier's head exploded like a watermelon. Zhang Yi looked at his right hand with satisfaction. "It seems my control over the power of space is getting stronger." Afterward, Zhang Yi released flames, burning the bodies of the 3 men until nothing was left. Liang Yu, watching all of Zhang Yi's actions, was completely speechless. Was it necessary to go to such lengths? That seems overly cautious. The West Mountain Base has already been destroyed by you. Isn't this superfluous? Zhang Yi seriously said. "That's what you don't understand. Qin Xinyan's status in Heavenly Sea City was pivotal, and his social connections are beyond our comprehension. What if someone finds out it was me who killed him, and then someone comes after me for revenge? I don't want to invite so much unnecessary trouble." Liang Yu rolled her eyes. "It's the apocalypse now. What you're saying is almost impossible." Zhang Yi stretched and said, "I will not leave any trace of danger possible. Weeds must be completely eradicated." Saying this, Zhang Yi questioned Liang Yu, "If you had considered such an outcome before coming to West Mountain Base, maybe your students wouldn't have died in such numbers." Liang Yu's heart jolted. Zhang Yi does have a point. I indeed bear inescapable responsibility for those students who died tragically. Her gaze towards Zhang Yi was complex, gradually beginning to understand his actions. At this moment, Zhang Yi prepared to call everyone to return. Then Liang Yu caught up and asked, "What about my students?" Zhang Yi didn't say much. He planned to drive Liang Yu to her students first. The students, following Zhang Yi's instructions, had hidden in a community closest to the West Mountain Base. They quickly found the students. After dropping off Liang Yu, Zhang Yi told her, "According to our agreement, I will arrange accommodation for you and provide some food. You should head to Su Family Town first. There are many vacant houses available there now, and you can learn fishing for food." Zhang Yi's arrangement had its own profound implications. Su Family Town was just across the river from the shelter. He didn't want to cut off contact with Liang Yu just like that. Liang Yu couldn't help but ask, "This place is a bit far from Su Family Town. Aren't you planning to drive us there?" Zhang Yi looked at her and said lightly, "I have fulfilled the promise I made to you. Moreover, to express my gratitude, I have given you food and arranged a place for you to stay. If you still want more from me, then you must bring enough benefits to exchange." Liang Yu said with an embarrassed face, "I thought we were already good friends. Isn't it a bit too much to talk like this?" Zhang Yi smiled in response. "Even friends should settle accounts clearly. That way, feelings won't get hurt. Let's leave it at that. See you in Su Family Town." Liang Yu nodded helplessly, then somewhat defiantly said, "Then we'll just go there on our own." Originally, Liang Yu had also wanted to take the opportunity to ask for her Dragon's Roar sword back, but seeing Zhang Yi's miserly demeanor, she knew it was basically more difficult than reaching the heavens. Watching Liang Yu's departing figure, Zhang Yi didn't really care about the fate of those students. He felt a bit of schadenfreude inside. But as for Liang Yu, a highly skilled innate mutant, Zhang Yi greatly admired her. He had his sights set on her combat abilities. "I'll make her mine sooner or later." After Zhang Yi and the others left, Liang Yu also arrived in the room where the students were warming themselves. The students were gathered around a fire, all looking in good spirits, and the temperature in the room was fairly warm. Liang Yu asked with concern, "Are you all okay?" The students looked at teacher Liang with disappointment in their eyes. One of them even said with a questioning tone, alone. Didn't you say you'd arrange a place for us to stay? Why did Zhang Yi leave on his own? Liang Yu hurried forward to reassure them. Don't worry, I've already discussed it with Zhang Yi. We'll temporarily stay in Su Family Town. There are plenty of places to stay there, and it's near Heron's River. We can live by fishing in the future. The students looked at each other. They were all children of wealthy families. How could they possibly get used to living in a place as remote as Su Family Town? Besides, they didn't know how to fish. At this moment, Wu Qingyu suddenly stood up and asked, Teacher Liang, I heard that Yang Xinxin and Lu Karen have both moved into Zhang Yi's villa. It's said that he lives in a shelter built by Wang Siming with $1 billion. I've visited it before. The place is spacious enough, completely able to accommodate all of us. Why didn't you negotiate with him to let us all move in there too? It must be much better than whatever Su Family Town is. Hearing this, the classmates also chimed in with agreement. Even Yang Xinxin, that cripple, can live there. Why can't we? With such cold weather outside, how are we supposed to live by fishing? Our hands will get frostbitten. Their eyes were all ablaze with greed. It was clear that during the recent period, they had already conspired their arguments and were fantasizing about the wonderful life after moving into Zhang Yi's shelter. Liang Yu felt utterly helpless inside. I fought to save them, and yet, why are they still so naive? Liang Yu sighed in disappointment. Forget about it. Being able to rescue you from that hellhole at West Mountain Base cost me risking my life multiple times. Besides, why should Zhang Yi let us stay in his shelter? He doesn't owe us anything. It's already better than peddling bicycles for protein solution in West Mountain Base, right? At least we are free now. Hearing this, the students realized their fantasy was shattered, and they became anxious. Then Liang Yu intensified her tone. Stop fantasizing. Everyone will take turns to keep watch and add fuel to the fire tonight. We will set off for Su Family Town at dawn tomorrow. The students no longer spoke up. After all, Teacher Liang was their only hope for survival now. Meanwhile, Zhang Yi returned to Yuelu community. Zhang Yi said to Uncle Yu, why don't you and Aunt Zhou also move to the villa area? There are many luxury villas in Lark Manor. You can pick any when the time comes. The environment in the villas is much better than in the community, and most importantly, it's easier for us to look out for each other when we're close. Uncle Yu naturally agreed. After this cooperative battle, he understood that they must stick together for warmth. If they encountered a mutant of Ling Feng's level, he probably wouldn't even know how he died. Chunlei also interjected. What are you afraid of? With your tough skin, ordinary mutants can't deal with you. Even if you can't beat them, you could at least run away, right? Unlike me, so fragile. Thank goodness I have brother Zhang to protect me. Uncle Yu sighed. I'm just worried about encountering organizations similar to West Mountain Base. Hearing this, Zhang Yi also said calmly, Uncle Yu's concerns are not unfounded. Heavenly Sea City couldn't possibly have just one organization like West Mountain Base. Although the extreme cold weather has claimed the lives of most people, this also means that those who have survived are not easy to deal with. Heavenly Sea City is a megacity with tens of millions of people. How many mutants there are, and how many armed forces exist, we still can't fully grasp. However, to lighten the mood, Zhang Yi suddenly said with a smile, actually, there's no need to worry too much. We managed to eliminate West Mountain Base, which was so formidable. So, I believe, as long as we work together, with our combined strength, we shouldn't need to fear anyone. Besides, we have Flower, Yang Xinxin, Lu Karen, Zhou Kir. Isn't each one of them a strong support team? Uncle Yu nodded vigorously in agreement. Indeed, that's the case. I'll go home and pack up to move right away. Just got home. Zhou Kir and Yang Mi immediately surrounded me, taking great care to check on my condition. The youngest, Lu Karen, was a bit shy, but was still carefully noticed by Zhang Yi. Zhang Yi immediately went over and gave her a big hug. This battle at West Mountain Base was truly thanks to you all. Lu Karen's face turned slightly red as she murmured, I just helped a little. It was Brother Yi who contributed the most. Zhang Yi pinched Lu Karen's slightly red face. Don't underestimate yourself. You are very important to me. This affectionate gesture made Lu Karen's face turn red all the way to her neck, her eyes flitting about, too embarrassed to make eye contact with Zhang Yi. At this moment, a jealous gaze came from behind. Yang Xinxin, sitting in a wheelchair, looked somewhat displeased. Seeing this, Zhang Yi quickly went forward to hug her. The biggest hero in completely wiping out West Mountain Base should be our Xinxin. Without your powerful hacking skills as a basis, it would have been impossible to change the coordinates of the missiles. Without that, we couldn't have preserved the shelter. We wouldn't dare to enter West Mountain Base recklessly, let alone plant bombs to blow it up. Subsequently, Zhang Yi talked about moving back, and naturally, everyone was very pleased. Although the safe house was warm and comfortable, it certainly wasn't as spacious as the shelter. The shelter, with its 5 floors of construction and all kinds of living facilities, was almost as luxurious as a palace. Uncle Yu also talked to Zhou Jaime about moving, and she said she would listen to whatever you decided. She even asked, I wonder how the villa I used to live in is doing. After all, I bought it for 200 million. Zhang Yi smiled and shook his head. All of those have been destroyed. Lark Manor was almost half blown up, but there are still many intact ones. You can pick any of them when the time comes. Zhou Jaime sighed deeply, feeling a great loss in her heart. After all, it represented a lifetime of effort. So, everyone started packing, but Zhang Yi didn't let them move everything. They only took the necessities and left some items in the safe house. Zhang Yi Yi told everyone, this place can serve as a temporary refuge. In case anything happens to the shelter again, we can come back here and stay for a few days. Everyone thought this made a lot of sense. Anyway, Zhang Yi's dimensional space has plenty of supplies. They quickly got ready to leave. Zhang Yi locked the heavy alloy doors layer by layer, not willing to let others use the safe house he had built with his own hands. Suddenly, Zhang Yi felt a spying gaze behind him, and upon checking, found it was Li Jian. Li Jian told Zhang Yi, a huge explosion woke me up a few hours ago, and I haven't been able to sleep since. I just saw you guys driving back, so I thought I'd come over and check on you. The explosion was naturally from the missile. Zhang Yi gave Li Jian a look. Thinking about Li Jian's weak and strange ability, he curiously asked, how are you feeling now? Have you noticed anything unusual? Li Jian shook his head. I've been feeling okay lately. I dare not use that ability anymore, or I might really end up as fertilizer. Zhang Yi didn't ask any further, and immediately went back to the shelter. Zhang Yi told Chun Lei and Uncle Yu, there are still a dozen intact villas around. Let's rest here tonight, and you can pick any you like tomorrow morning. After saying this, Zhang Yi returned to his own bedroom. After several days of turmoil, I can finally have a good sleep. The effects of the stimulant are almost over. In the coming period, he would fall into a state of deep weakness.